sample
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
proposal. So if you're leaving, I just didn't know. But
Nice. No, yeah, yeah. That was really cool. I actually put a link to it in the governance doc in the references. I didn't like condense. I didn't like transfer any of it to the governance doc, but I did put a link there, so at least everybody then can find it through the references in the governance doc. But I think it'll be useful. I think it'll be really, yeah, it'll be really useful. In fact, because we just did this BIDL proposal, and after looking at that, I was like, oh yeah, this could have been helpful for kind of formatting our grants BIDL proposal. But
I guess talking about the proposal framework from Bankless that's getting ported over.
Oh, I didn't use Bankless. I just Googled the internet for like effective proposals, and then I found two that were pretty interesting, and yeah, so as a cool example.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Maiko, we bid you adieu. Enjoy your trip, dude. And I think that, like, yeah, let's just like cancel next week and not worry about it, and then take a chill, and then we'll just reconvene the following week after. No problem.
Cool. Nice. All right, well, have so much fun. I'm actually kind of jealous that I'm gonna miss out on the governance talk, but I hope you take some good notes.
We got good recording and nothing else. See you, pal.
Ciao.
Fabulous. I'm going to drop the draft into Community Voice, and I think we'll just pick off like where we left off, right? Last week was kind of going line by line and just trying to get this thing dialed in a way that we can move it forward. I see that we have some notes on here. Let's see what we got going on. Okay. Cool. I think we left off like right around Section E. Does that sound about right, guys?
Yeah, just about.
Just about. Oh, hey, Tomahawk, you did make it. Tomahawk has a governance mind, but he's a busy man today, so he's just going to lurk, I think. But we'll see if we can provoke him to speak up a little bit.
Yo. Yeah, I just want to catch up on what you guys are doing here. I haven't really been a part of any of these meetings, so.
Yeah, let me TLDR you, and so like essentially, we have one governance framework in place that's sort of like super basic, right? Like basically one punk, one vote. And then, this thing is an attempt to sort of, make a more equitable, snapshot voting regimen, but that's really like the least of what it does. Most of what it's trying to do is develop, like some really transparent governance procedures and definitions to allow the DAO to run in the absence of sort of any of, the people who are main contributors, right? So like if the core team died tomorrow and, the folks who've been really active these last couple of months disappeared, that the DAO could go on in our absence. And so we're trying to build essentially institutional knowledge, into this kind of framework. And at the same time, really develop what I think we hope, is a good model governance framework to share with the DAO space, right? And so some of it wants to be like a little edgy, like automatic treasury triggers for distributions. Some of it wants to be uber transparent, and that's fine. And so I think it's more of like, as I'm looking through it, attempting to be like a good template, right? It's for that other DAOs can build off of. And so one of the things we're doing, Tomahawk, is like we're publishing everything that we do, like whether that's the grants framework and how we got there, whether it's how we did the one-to-one shirts, which is going to be a video we're going to shoot in LA like next month. And how we're doing our governance, et cetera, et cetera. And that way you can sort of like people can look at it and pick it apart and grab it and fork it, right? I think that kind of keeps within the ethos of the space. So that's it. So it's kind of an overly complex. Yeah. Thank you. And so it's like it's a little
value
bit
back. I love it.
Well, you got to, right? And like, what are you gonna do? Like, keep the stuff in your silo, buried in some Notion page somewhere no one's ever gonna see. And if we put a lot of time in this thing, we put time in it because we just so happen to have like some governance-minded people who are core contributors, right? And I think that it's unique that way. A lot of kind of, I don't know if you want to call us a proto DAO. I guess we're a DAO. A lot of DAOs, don't start off with governance, right? They fill in the governance gaps later. But like we've seen over at Bankless, for example, the problems that happen when you do that. And so, or at City DAO, or at Aragon, or at Olympus DAO, or wherever you look. I mean, it's like super common. And so the idea would be just to get these things dialed in now, and then have it ready for the future, right? And then these are constant iterations. And so, we'll get this snapshotted up at some point here in the next couple of months, and then we'll keep on working on the next version, and to better and better, whatever better means, So today.
Eventually get to it, but like there seems to be like a disconnect when we're not like we're always adding more titles and roles. Like in the document itself, we have governance coordinators, core team coordinators in general, administrators, and we have a lot of titles with no explanation of who exactly these are, and like there's no like aggregate list of just like here are like an aggregate list of all the roles and what they are and what they do. And I kind of saw this a lot when trying to skim through this document. It might be like a problem we can get to eventually, or like we could discuss it when it comes up. But I just started. It was a repeating thing that I noticed in here. I don't know if anybody else saw that.
Well, I think part of the issue that you're having is that so this is a prospective document, right? And so like none of these roles have been filled yet. So I mean, with the exception of now sort of the grant champions, right? And so, that has been filled. But in terms of like governance coordinators, not filled. Treasury management, coordinators, not filled. The core team is listed in here somewhere, I think. Admins are listed in here. Authors are also listed in here. I mean, to the extent that they're available, right? But because we haven't had governance coordinators, which is really like governance working group leaders, elected, yet there's no way to fill that in. Although I see what you mean. Like you would want to say, like here. So if we go down to like Section 4, where Miko's talking about, where they do define some of these things. Does that answer some of your immediate concerns, or are you just thinking? I see what you're talking about. You're just worried about are you worried about like defining the roles or filling the names in with role holders?
A little bit of both, or just making sure that like you have all these titles for everything, and that like you're making sure that like they are properly defined. Well, one, properly defined, and two, to make sure that you're not creating a new title for something that is already exists as a different name. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I don't. Honestly, like, I don't think we're doing that anywhere, but I'd be curious if we are. I see what you mean, though. Like coordinators is sort of defined here in a vague way, like in D1, for example, right?
And then for 4C, you mentioned like coordinators general, and then there's no, and then like I know referred previously, you have governance. I know it's like nitpicking of terms, but like you have governance coordinators, and then I'm just. It just seems like a little bit too much, but like this just might be my own misunderstanding of everything.
Well, no, it is we haven't got to that part of the doc to refine it, right? So like, I mean, just for background for you, Live Fast, like this thing was sort of an amalgamation of probably like 4 or 5 different documents that Miko took and has attempted to sort of coalesce into a single document, right? But no one besides Miko has gone in here and done any work to sort of get a second set of eyes or a 10th set of eyes to go in and clean it up. And so I think that, maybe there's some knowledge in his head that hasn't made it to the page yet, if that's what you're seeing. I mean, dude, to be honest with you, like I haven't even gone down to Section 4 yet, so I don't know what it says. So, So I'd sort of be pretending, but I know what you mean. And I think that at the essence of what you're saying is if you're going to define a term, maybe define it when you first use it, and then be very mindful that if you use a similar term, that you reference to the same term and you don't be overly broad or overly narrow when it's inappropriate, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get it. I think that's probably like just cleanup work in the end, but it's important to keep it in mind as we move forward, for sure. So, no, I appreciate that. Hey, CB.
Yo, what's up?
Just doing the thing, you know. Are you going to ETH Denver? Just to change topics real quick. I didn't know if you were going or not. I don't think you are you?
No, nope.
All right. Michael's very excited, getting ready to go, so he's not here at the moment. So, okay, back to work. So we are on Section E. If we all kind of want to follow along, you know, so when, and I'm going to have to kind of maybe put words in Michael's mouth a bit, but when he says a DAO vote, what he means is a DAO snapshot vote. So a snapshot vote would be required. And I think DAO vote's actually defined somewhere else, but we can put that into little brackets here if we need to. Whoever anonymous kangaroo is, go for it. But we'll just do that for now. You know, so a snapshot vote is required for changes to the main frameworks, governance, treasury, and grants. Any transaction of the treasury not explicitly granted by the treasury management proposal. So, you know, again, like these things are going to pull in related documents, and you know, within that we have talked about essentially allowing, you know, the core team and the multi-sigs, which are not quite the same, although they overlap a lot, you know, to execute snapshot transactions, you know, as they see fit up to a certain limit in the treasury. And the backstory for this is at some point, you know, really before too long, maybe it'd be good to have treasury, like automatic treasury triggers, linked to snapshot voting, so that, for example, if you do a snapshot to disperse grant money to recipients, you'd have the code correct so that at the conclusion of the snapshot, the treasury would disperse. Part of that is to keep, you know, part of what we're trying to do is to keep the DAOPunks sort of really forward facing in terms of what it means to be a DAO, and really sort of on the technological edge of that. So you remove the sort of trustless, which we're learning to be is, you know, an issue, human element from DAO governance, and allowing the code to execute the will of the community through snapshot. I don't know how long until we get there, but that's the eventual plan for that. And hence the terms about not explicitly granted by the treasury management proposal. In Section 3, we're talking about doing snapshots for multi-sig on and off for admins for snapshot. Admins are, so there's two levels of snapshot. Essentially, you have admins who can change all the settings. And then you have authors who have the ability to sort of fire up a proposal, set some parameters, and then set it up for vote, but aren't able to get within the guts of snapshot itself. The way we have it now, the only admins are CB and me. We do need to add Sinjin. And then for authors, you know, people who can make snapshots proposals become actual snapshots would be the same core team plus governance coordinators. And like I've said in a few of these meetings, you know, I kind of view governance coordinators and the governance working group as also encompassing operations generally, at least operations to the extent that the core team doesn't take care of that. And really, at this point, I mean, the core team does the bulk of that work. I mean, does all that work anyway. But going forward, it would be dispersed a bit to the extent that we can. For 3C admins of the DAOPunk Discord server, that's interesting. That maybe strikes me as a little bit broad. Like I would probably keep that like just the core team, not on snapshot, since the ability to sort of like do massive destruction is implicated by that choice. So maybe we bring that up and kind of talk about it for a sec. Do we think that we should have, like, you know, essentially that admins can be added or removed via snapshot? And this is for Discord admins. So essentially the ability to sort of add and delete channels, add and delete roles, and, you know, honestly sort of delete everything that you have here. Because you got to remember, like, snapshot's not backed up. There's no duplicate copy anywhere. I don't think it's possible. And so, you know, there's sort of even a heightened level of trust for admin, which is, again, goes back to this interesting trustless idea of DAOs. And so I'd love to some feedback on that.
Are you referencing, or is it talking about Discord moderation or Snapshot moderation?
This one in particular is Discord moderation.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, it's best to have as little vectors as possible. And so, like, currently right now, I think our server only has 3 like full admins, including myself. And like, I think you're another one, and then Koros is one.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, what I've seen happen to other Discords, like Atom Bomb Squad and like some other big Discords, is when there's too many people that have admin rights, some of those people get fished or whatever, and the Discord gets like deleted and stuff, and there's like no backup function. So I would say, like, even if we did do something like that, I think we should have like a hard cap on how many people have admin rights, and then there has to be like some very strict rules about like what those people have to have in terms of security to not become an issue.
Yeah, like one of the things we're finding, right, is you can have you need to have 2FA enabled, certainly, but like it's almost like you need to go through like a OPSEC security course, so you're not you're keeping sort of mentally aware of the non-technical tricks that people use to fish out info, right?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that because I agree with Bushi here. And what you just said, I was actually gonna like say, a hero, that I think, like, for someone to be an admin, there needs to be some basic security understanding. So I am product manager for a cybersecurity boot camp, and like the amount of like lack of knowledge where like people think cybersecurity is like hacking and stuff like that. Well, there's certain parts to that, but a lot of it is social engineering, and a lot of it is like the lack of basic functionalities that you can do on your own, like as you said, 2FA and whatnot, that people don't do. And I think there needs to be, for someone to have an admin rights to anything, really, there needs to be a basic level of OPSEC.
For sure. Yeah, like I literally put those words in here, like basic OPSEC understanding into the framework. So yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. And I really do think like the attack vector is more psychological than technical for most of these.
Is there a current process of how you evaluate who's going to become an admin for the Discord server?
No, not at all. I mean, so it's like the core team, and then so who is it really? I mean, it's me and CB, Sinjin,
and then no, not even Sinjin. So it's just Koros, Hero, and me who have full super admin abilities. Basically, everybody else, they just have like elevated permissions, but they don't have like the ability to delete anything and like cause any damage.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought Sinjin was purple now, because he was having that issue that the other day. So I thought maybe he was, but
maybe he is. Yeah, he might be. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah. So no, I mean, so we're operating off of implicit trust, right? So no, there's no current sort of metrics to do that, which is why we're building this thing out, right? And so to have a sense of that. Does that answer your question, Live Fast?
Yep.
Cool. And then the fourth vote, fourth. I'm losing my words. The fourth thing that would require a snapshot vote would just be to determine grantees for the grants proposal. Are we able to think of anything offhand besides, changes to the core documents, to the way that treasury allocation happens, to addition removal of signatories and admins from our various tools, and from grantees that we can imagine wanting to have a snapshot for? Live Fast?
The only other thing that I would think of is if you happen to rely on other aspects of the core team, if you want to define who is quantifies as the core team later on in the future.
Yeah, so that's actually sort of up for discussion and how we wanted to find out in this document, but Understood.
I guess the only thing I would say would be any mergers, acquisitions, selling, that type of thing.
Alienation of economic rights. That's essentially. I'll put it in here for now.
Yeah, just spitballing.
For sure. Which I mean, in some ways, right, like falls under, transactions related to treasury, but I understand what you mean. Like I'm only aware of, I mean, besides Hermes and Polygon, like I'm not actually even aware of another sort of protocol to protocol. And DAOPunks can be thought of as a protocol at some point, right? Like merger, but it's only a matter of time before we see more of that. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just feel like that's coming on in the horizon. We might as well include it.
Yeah, no, I think that's
you never know.
Totally. Anything else, guys?
Kind of similar, but DAO to DAO collaborations maybe is a more likely topic that's kind of similar. I don't know if that's something we want to allow the entire community to vote on or not, but it's a thought.
I think it's a fair point, Tomahawk. I think right now that's probably a little too decentralized, for the stage of where we are in this DAO. For the moment, sort of the core team, and let's really be honest, more like, you have people come to us, right, who want to collab, essentially, and they reach out to, CB and or Sinjin and or me, and then want to go kind of forward in that regard. I don't think that kind of work personally like warrants a snapshot vote, since the entire purpose of it is sort of like, one, to spread the DAOPunks message, but two, to provide money to the treasury. I'm not sure it's really appropriate to decentralize that decision making at this point, but I'm certainly down for other opinions.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking like something very significant, like an ongoing relationship type situation. I certainly trust the core team to make those decisions as well if we don't think that it's appropriate.
No, but it's we're trying to figure this out and feel it out, right? And so we're trying to figure out what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And so, when you were formulating that thought, Tomahawk, what was in your mind?
Just trying to think of things. I don't know. Just trying to throw ideas out to as complete as possible. I don't really have a well-defined point here.
No, I like
if it's more of a permanent partnership type thing, that I guess that's more or less what I was thinking too, for mergers or partnership, that type of, if it's a major systemic change where we're going to be influenced by another organization's governance or that type of thing.
Yeah, totally. And so like I'm making some jokes on the governance doc, but essentially I think what you're getting at is all of a sudden, like, if Nike approaches DAOPunks and says, I love your merch, I love your grants, I want to pay you 20x over your your floor NFT price to basically buy you out.
Right.
That would want to be snapshotted as opposed to letting the core team decide that. I think that's legit, right?
That's what I meant. Yeah, not just the core team collaborating with, I'm just talking, like a bigger thing like that.
So I called it super significant DAO to DAO partnerships, or maybe DAO to core partnerships. Yeah, I think that's fair. CB, would you have any pushback on that?
No, to be honest, I missed what you guys said like the last 2 minutes anyways, so no.
It's all good. That's the beauty of like decentralized work, So the we're talking about, when is a snapshot appropriate, and both Tomahawk and Garrett raised the idea that if you had a really significant change in the way that we did operations, or if there was some kind of acquisition of DAOPunks, that should warrant a snapshot. And like it would be, for example, if say, Nike came in and said, I love what you guys do with your merch, I love what you do, with your grants, and I want to, essentially buy you for 20x of your floor price across the board. And whether that is appropriate for the core team to consider on its own, or whether that should be snapshotted by the community. And I think that the consensus is that's probably snapshot worthy.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, how do you like write language that would potentially cover, you know, all scenarios basically, you know what I mean? So like that's obviously like a very like granular situation.
Alienation of economic rights. Wouldn't that
I'm just
fall under
asking.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking like I guess in what situations would we define as being like worthy to vote on Snapshot versus not? You know what I mean?
Well, that's right.
That would kind of cover like all different things. Cause like, I mean, in like my past business life, I would work on, you know, deal flows, acquisitions, and people would always have these like elaborate, you know, negotiations. And it's like, when you get down to it and you're like trying to write language for it, it's like, you just can't, because it's just so like specific. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, I think that we could get some language that does something, right? That provides some measure of security for the community that the core team won't sell them out. You know what I mean? Let's think about that. I mean, there's question marks here.
Is that really the main concern? Like, so are we talking about like what kind of stuff should be going on Snapshot, or are we more just trying to cover a potential, like just one specific kind of eventual?
No, talking about things that should go on Snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like, it's not like practically, you know, like, you know, some multinational can come in and say, give me all your NFTs. That's the beauty of the decentralized nature of the blockchain, right? I mean, they can't force Tomahawk to sell his DAOPunk, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny part too. Cause I mean, like theoretically, I guess if we were a DAO and, you know, we'll use Nike as the example again. If Nike wanted to do like a corporate raid, I mean, they could essentially just buy all the DAOPunks. You know what I mean?
Right. They'd have to contact each 600, you know, all 650 and then buy them all. Right.
Yeah.
For some ridiculous amount of money. I mean, logistically, obviously not going to happen, but the tenor of what you're talking about, guys, I think is, you know, rings true, even though if it's unfeasible, like practically speaking, you know, because part of it is like, well, what if for some reason, you know, you aligned with, you know, or you misaligned with some other DAO that was really not part of what your core mission was, or it was away from what, you know, Crypto Bushi likes to refer to as our North Star, right? And so I almost wonder if you like want opposite language, like, you know, like dialectic language, like saying that, you know, if an X amount of community holders feel that this collaboration is not in the spirit of DAOPunks, then it will go to Snapshot. You know, like if you sesh out, you know, if someone drops a sesh and it turns out that, you know, 3/4 of the community says, I don't like this thing happening with Argon, I want it to change. And then you snapshot that, as opposed to trying to be more proactive in defining what the parameters of possibilities are.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, yeah, I mean, like I think even LiveFast was asking about, you know, what kind of proposals we could present to the community. And it's kind of like in my head, it's kind of like, well, I guess really the community is potentially open to anything. If everybody kind of agrees, then I guess there's no issue, right? I mean, it could kind of be out of the scope of some things, but if it's just such a great idea that nobody thought about it, then there's no reason why we should create guardrails, you know, saying that we aren't going to do certain things that maybe we just aren't thinking about. And so in this case, like you said, yeah, maybe it's better to just have like some general kind of process for how the community can present a proposal, not be specific on what those proposals can and can't be, but just assume that if a certain percentage of the community agrees that that should be snapshotted, then most likely it probably is, you know, worthy of going up to a snapshot.
I like that better. What do you guys think?
You know, it's almost like the community should weed out, you know, BS. I mean, in a theoretical world, I guess, you know, there's a chance where, you know, maybe some kind of nefarious, you know, proposal gets passed, but that would just assume that everybody's a bad actor. And if you just study like simple game theory, it's just probably not going to happen.
Totally. And I think that actually maybe nails it, right? Is like really what we want to add in here for another thing that people can snapshot, you know, are proposals that have been approved by the community over a particular percentage, right? You know, if 3/4 of all DAOPunk holders think that this proposal is valid, then it gets snapshotted, or whatever numbers we want to use.
Yeah, which I guess we would then just have to define, I guess, what the procedure is to temperature check that. You know what I mean?
Correct.
I had thought about that I had thought about this that that question or that theory of like, what is the minimum number that you would need for a proposal to for a snapshot to approve of, like, how many votes do you need of the community? Because, you know, last week we were talking about not participating after a certain number of, like, after a certain time period, because they're just not paying attention. And I kind of came up with like a solution that may work temporarily until you want to commit to like 51% of the entire community. You take, if you I mean, you can let me know what you think. You do 51% of the total number of people who voted in the previous snapshot.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
It's because we obviously have like numbers of people who voted in the previous one. We'll always have at least one, and the contribution level of people who are like paying attention to actually vote will help solve that problem of like never running into the issue of like not having enough people like to meet quorum.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you though, just like, you know, of the 3 snapshots that we've had, the first one had about 290 people. The second one had about 60. So that one wouldn't have gone. And then the last one had like about 100 and something.
Yeah.
And so
just a thought I had.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying based upon, you know, our history of snapshots, like you'd have one that would have not gone through, right? So we spent some time kind of going. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess then there would be the question, like, you know, if we did do a structure like that, you know, is it per punk owned, or is it quadratic, like even in the temperature checking, or is it like per, you know, person?
I don't know that there's
even you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even think there's a way to dial in sesh for its quadratic, is there?
So it might just be like kind of, because I was thinking like, you know, what if somebody, again, what if there was like almost like a corporate raid scenario where somebody bought up a large supply and then pushed through a proposal, but I can see how that could be kind of thwarted. Maybe they could push a proposal through artificially, but once it goes to snapshot, if we're using quadratic voting, then they kind of lose all of their luster at that point. You know what I mean?
Totally. And so, that's the backbone of this. I mean, of the snapshot part of this proposal is that it becomes quadratic, right? Which is good, but yeah, it's interesting. And so,
I wonder if you build in some guardrails around, you know, like stuff that absolutely can't happen. But then in those scenarios, you know, I guess there could be one day where you're like, oh shit, like we didn't think about this, and this is actually a scenario we want to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. And I think, you know, practically there are going to be those days, right? Where, I mean, it's just like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. And then all of a sudden it's like the issue of the day, right? I mean, well, hell, I mean, you're seeing that in Bankless right now, right? With that quorum stuff. And so, well,
it's almost like you have to deploy some sort of game theory to this. You know what I mean? Like and which is an interesting thing, right? But it's kind of like how we're all still alive, even though, like, you know, we could blow the earth up thousands of times with nuclear bombs, but it hasn't happened yet. You know what I mean? It's like, it could happen, but it hasn't happened, and it probably won't happen, but it can.
There is like that statistical run where it shows you have a better chance of it happening by accident than you do on purpose.
Yeah, so it's almost like we have to almost accept that no matter what we do, there will always be that kind of potential fallout that could happen. Sure. You know, but just kind of always kind of hoping that just game theory kind of takes over the day on that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's another way to do it. Well, so guys, I mean, my takeaway from all of that is essentially community-backed proposals need a process, right? And I know that Maiko, I'm not sure if you're in a place where you can talk. You know, we were chatting proposals last week. I feel like you mentioned that you dropped some language in here about proposals, although I haven't looked and don't know. But, you know, for everything that, you know, all the added extra kind of like thoughts about, you know, alienation of economic rights, or, you know, Nike coming to take us, you know, in the end, it's about like, what is your proposal framework and what does it take to get a proposal to snapshot, right? And so, you know, we obviously need to spend more time dialing that part in. So I'll just make some notes on that.
And you could even, another interesting thing too is kind of like what's going on with this cult DAO is like they have an interesting setup where, only the top 50 token holders are allowed to submit proposals. And then they're not they call them guardians. So like the top 50 token holders, they can submit proposals, but they can't vote on the proposals. The only people that can vote on the proposals are basically the rest of the token holders. And it's just kind of an interesting structure. I know that really wouldn't apply in our case, but it's kind of outside of the box.
I think that it could apply. I'm not saying that it should, but I actually find the model to be super intriguing, right? And it does sort of implicate some of the game theory you're talking about, and in some ways, it obviates some of those concerns,
And then, the way it would work, like if you're just a normal token holder, you basically have to find a guardian to champion your proposal. So it's not like, because you're not a guardian, you can't submit a proposal. I mean, you absolutely can. You just have to find somebody to basically sponsor it and submit it. And so that's kind of interesting because it adds an extra layer of accountability for, a guardian has to basically say, yeah, that makes sense,
It's interesting because it both aligns and disaligns, economic incentives and governance. And so it's pretty fascinating, actually. Just as a thought experiment with who's here. Yeah, Michael, go for it.
Oh, yeah. I like where this is going because earlier when we were talking about the Discord vulnerability, and we were talking about, how do we keep the administrators accountable to any errors that they make? Because it might be unintentional errors, but if people who can write proposals and people who are administrators of the Discord have to stake a certain amount of economic value, they have enough personal stake to pay attention to protecting that vulnerability enough. So kind of the Graph protocol and Uniswap work that way. And it sounds like Cult DAO is a little bit different, but somewhat similar. But having administrators or core team members or whatever titles, however we want to distribute that, actually have to have a stake that can get slashed for accountability to mistakes that are made or malicious actions. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. But I also wanted to ask a question because I have a friend who is wanting to join in on the meeting, and he doesn't have a DAOPunk. And I thought you didn't need to have a DAOPunk to join in on the community voice meetings. Do you guys?
No.
You don't, right?
No, you should be able to join.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We're just having some technical issues, so I guess we'll just have to get it sorted out for next time.
Is he stuck up with the collab line to verify part? I know that's been kind of geeky lately.
He went through that, but do you have to go through that to unlock the community voice?
I think
not the collab
if you don't have a DAO.
No, not collab. He has to interact with that. There's a post where you have to thumbs up it.
Yeah, it's just the rules channel, right?
Then it's to unlock the whole server. Yeah, if he's hitting
that's what I thought.
If he's hitting that and it's not unlocking it, then just let me know because we might just remove that altogether. We've had issues in the past, but most servers use it, so it should be working.
It should be working, but he did that and it's not working. But I can send you his Discord handle in case there is any weird thing. I guess you can be able to see.
I'll just hit up COOK, our main moderator dude. Help us out.
Okay. Word. Anyway, yeah, I couldn't help but join back in because I'm kind of just packing, and I guess since I'm not I don't have to lead the meeting or manage the recording, then I can just listen in while I'm packing.
We like it. Perfect. So in the end, these extra bullet points I added, really get subsumed by community-backed proposals. And so we seem to make sure that we have a really clean proposal process going forward. And I know that we've talked about that for the last few meetings and that we will. And so all good. Michael, before you pop back on, we did talk about that. And you put some language somewhere in the bottom about proposals. Is that right?
I didn't put any language. I just dropped a link to the document that Themes shared with me. So I'm pretty sure that that is open and public document. So yeah, I didn't put anything from that in the governance document, but there is a link there. And I figured like the governance document could have a lot of different resources that aren't necessarily like bylaws, like, but they're just resources that are like, hey, if you're gonna write a proposal, maybe check this out. At least you've got somewhere to go, and it doesn't have to be like a law written in stone, but it's there. Because I don't know how complex we want to make all these bylaws, and like say like you have to write the proposal like in this format at this stage. I mean, eventually maybe, but do you see the link down there at the bottom? It'd be at the very, very bottom under the references section.
I'm looking. I just see, yeah, proposal example. Sure.
Yeah.
EB, did you have a chance to go and look to see whether or not, there was a cheaper version of Discourse?
I think I looked at it, and there were 2 payment options, I believe. Yeah, there was one that was like $20, I think, but it was for teams, so I don't really know what that means.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like restricted to a certain amount of people. I mean, I'd be interested to hear if B17z has like a decentralized option. It sounds like every time he has like, oh yeah,
No.
there's this one.
No, where'd he go?
It's so full of really good information and experience.
Totally. That's why I was like yesterday, oh my God, just drop and he did that, right? I mean, I think I saw that yesterday.
Well, what is Discourse used for? What is the main function of it?
The Discourse is the forum. Like in Bankless,
okay.
That's what the forums are built on.
I mean, I'm friends. I'm like pseudo friends with him. I could just ping him as an action item to like follow up with him if he has a recommendation on decentralized or better forms of it. So you just want to ask him like a alternative to Discourse.
A decentralized alternative to Discourse, yeah. And like this has been on my piece of paper for a couple of weeks, but like it just doesn't rise to the top because it's not an emergency. But I'm curious, like Commonwealth is another name of a sort of a Discourse / Snapshot combined tool, which I'm sort of like really curious about. I know that like Odyssey's SubDAO Rect uses Commonwealth, but I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it other than it's just like Snapshot plus Discourse combined.
All right, I'll do that action item and take care of that after.
Are you guys like pals? You guys seem to think a lot the same way, so I wonder if you guys have work experience together. I've actually been wondering.
I literally, we have mutual friends in common, and he's and like I've been listening to him for like we've been talking about crypto together for like the last like 3-4 years, and he's the one who actually convinced me to actually get a DAOPunk. And so like cool. Yeah, I talked to him about a lot of like random stuff, and I asked him a lot of questions. So like we're pretty friendly with each other.
Cool. You guys had seen that similar brains, which is why I asked if you had a similar background.
Oh yeah, no. B17z has a he's where we do wildly different things in our personal lives, but like we talk a lot, and I guess like I echo a lot of what he does because I listen to him.
Yeah. Cool. That's the great part about having people, Awesome. Yeah, so ping him, that would be great.
You would think there would be like some really good open source forum softwares out there, but it's like everyone's using like these paid services. I'm just like, it's just kind of funny, but
well, you got to get like somebody. You got to get
somebody has to host it. Yeah, no, I understand somebody has to host it, but I would even be more open to like spinning up like a DigitalOcean server and running one or something. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, points made though, right? For sure.
You can always apply for a grant, CB. We can get it up and running.
Yeah, there we go. We'll just we'll run it as a proposal.
Do we have anything else on snapshots in particular? Is there anything that like we're just missing that is occurring to you as we're talking here? I think for me, I mean, it seems like having a robust proposal framework that can then feed into Snapshot, takes care of a lot of the ancillary concerns we may have regarding its use. I'll take silence as consent for now. Okay, cool. I think that kind of moves on from the core part about DAO voting. Any questions or concerns about DAO voting generally? And DAO voting just means snapshot voting for the most part. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
This next section is core team. We'll kind of worry about that later. I'm not sure that we really know what we want to do here yet. I mean, at some point we need to kind of define what a core team is, who the members are, I suppose, to some extent. Although,
yeah, I was very curious about this because I thought I knew this answer, but then I realized I was like, I have no idea, and if somebody else was just on the outside looking in, they would get very confused really quickly too.
Yeah, so here's the issue, right? I mean, and this is kind of an ongoing issue, but the DAOPunks website's not updated in some ways, and it has incomplete information in others, right? So that just needs to be kind of bumped up to the top of some priority list somewhere. And I don't know who would actually be the person to tap to fix that kind of stuff. But, Flock, they were the devs, right? CB essentially. They don't have any economic interest in DAOPunks.
Yeah, Flock was just the design team. Yeah, they just got hired as a project per project basis, basically.
Right. And Bankless DAO, I mean, you can argue with, BDAO about whether we're a sub-DAO or not. Again, they think we are, or at least certain, silos within Bankless thinks that we are a sub-DAO. I think we'd probably, it's an interesting discussion to have with them. But I don't think it's something you can figure out in a governance doc necessarily, right?
Yeah. My only concern, I guess, with the core team is I don't really like the name core team. I feel like it was just kind of just an off the cusp just way to put a name around it until we figured out what the hell it really was. I don't like that because there were a lot of people that did contribute to the formation of this project, and some of those people still do contribute in the background. But maybe you wouldn't call those people direct core team members towards some definitions, and so I really don't want to I don't want to segregate people and make people feel left out by defining something like that, like a team per se. I really would rather identify individual people that hold maybe some responsibilities that maybe are for instance I'm paying out of my pocket certain things for the Discord server and for hosting fees for the assets of the DAOPunk NFTs and stuff like that. And Hero has paid for some stuff personally himself, and Sinjin as well. And so, and then there's a whole nother discussion around people that are on the multi-sign account for the treasury for now. And so it's I don't know. I don't want to put a wrapper name on it per se because I don't want to make some people feel secluded or not included. So it might be a better idea to just identify vectors basically personally as okay, Bushi kind of has control of these vectors that are outside of the DAO's control at this very moment. And then we can, once we identify each of those individual vectors, maybe over time people will identify oh, look, here's a solution to how we can decentralize that and that and that and onwards. You know what I mean? Rather than kind of batching it all into this core team, and it's kind of confusing at that point. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think that actually kind of circles back to what I was originally stating in the beginning of this, where it's just we don't really have a list of who's what and what everybody's who's doing what and what their quote unquote titles are if they want titles, and just kind of establishing that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. That's the thing. I personally don't think that I hold any more power than anybody else. I feel maybe theoretically I do because I am an admin on the server, right? But I can't really just pass that off to random people because A, I don't know if those people will stick around, and B, I don't know if those people are really good actors. And so it's almost I'm kind of taking on this role that I don't really per se want, but somebody has to have it until there's a good solution. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and you've been really vocal about like not wanting that, right? Like, I mean, your dream, and I think that all of our dreams in some ways is like, you know, how does, and more particular for you and for St. John, because I mean, the art that you create is the economic engine of DAOPunks at this moment, right? And so, yeah, it's interesting. I like the idea of defining, like, you know, first of all, core team is just it's a term we use in crypto to describe people that have particular responsibilities. But to look at it the way that you are, CB, is really interesting. So it's like, yeah, you have responsibilities, but that's really just like a function of attack vectors in some ways, right? And how can those vectors be decentralized to make DAOPunks essentially, you know, to not get into Talib too much, but anti-fragile, right? I mean, how do you keep DAOPunks going when you have these responsibilities, you know, sort of concentrated in particular hands, you know?
Exactly. It's like I don't, you know, I don't particularly want to be in control of the Discord, but if it's not me, then who else? And really, I was the first person here, so I guess it makes the most sense at this moment that it still is me, right? But I guess until a good solution comes up, then it's kind of like, well, I'm just kind of, I guess, just got to go with the flow until we figure that out.
It's interesting. So it kind of it implicates, you know, sort of how we define what, you know, what decentralized organizations are and what blockchains do, you know, because that goes to the trustless part, you know, like what does it mean to trust somebody you don't know, you know?
Yeah, how do you give up the keys, sort of thing?
Well, yeah, and you know, Micah, what you gonna say?
Oh yeah, I think that there's like two elements to the intention behind defining a core team. One of the elements is like the honorific sort of acknowledgement of the personal resources and like, you know, ton of work that like the founders have put into this. And like not only the founders, but also like who do you consider a founder and who do you like, what's the cutoff to the date when somebody joined in? But the point is, like you said, you're funding some of the a lot of the overhead, and you obviously, you know, are creating like all this art, creating these partnerships, and fulfilling like the responsibilities that need to happen while we're just like inventing this organization. And I think so there's like an honorific thing to that, which is just acknowledging that input of effort. And then the other side of it is like full disclosure on our trust vulnerabilities, you know. And I guess my idea of whatever we call the core team, but like creating that section in the doc is just to describe exactly what is happening currently. Just to describe it and say, like, for example, there's a group of people who like make executive decisions on like what to pay for, you know, and in order to get work done. And that group of people, you know, is these people, and they, you know, that's basically effectively acting as like our treasury for now, until we get a treasury framework going, and then we have like a formal process of, like you guys said, like actually describing roles. But for now, it's like, it's just to describe what's happening right now. And then we continue to refine our governance framework moving forward at the next iterations.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, like I said, I just really want to be mindful about, you know, how we go about defining this in the sense of like, again, that there were, you know, this project was founded by a lot of people. Like, you know, some people did more than others, right? But it was a collective effort. And again, some of these people you guys can recognize, but then others, you know, you might not be able to recognize their effort because it's stuff that like only I would know from the back end. And I don't want those people to feel like, oh, they were in some way like pushed out or not included and stuff like that. And so I think we just have to be sensitive about how we go about that because, you know, unfortunately, we can talk about all this decentralization and stuff like that, but we still live in a centralized world. And so we still have to play by the rules to some degree. And like an example of that is like we're dropping this hoodie soon, right? And in order for us to sell hoodies on Shopify, like we need a corporate structure. Like we literally need an EIN number, and we need a bank account for that. And so, you know, we had to set that stuff up. And And literally, it's not because we want to set that stuff up. It's because we just have to. We have to play by the rules in order to kind of keep growing. And then with that, there's certain kind of rules and things that you have to follow in the United States with kind of how you set some stuff up. And so, there were maybe some people that could have been included on that stuff, but maybe couldn't have because, maybe they're not from the United States, they're from a different country. And so, again, you're kind of getting into like technicalities more than anything. And so I don't want people to look at like, oh, this is the core team, when in reality, like there are a lot of people that contribute here. And so that's why I kind of like the idea of like identifying individually, what people hold, maybe some more centralized things over others. And then we list those out. And I mean, maybe you can put a wrapper on it, like core team, whatever. And you can talk about, decision making and stuff. But I still think we should be a little sensitive on kind of how we label things like that. And that, again, that's not for my gain at all. It's completely, I'm trying to think of other people here and try to just keep people happy. Because if we start to exclude people, then that's just, a community where people feel excluded that just leads to a centralized community at that point, And then I always want to be thinking about how we can move towards, less centralized options as they become available. Like I would love to explore moving some of these expenses to the DAO treasury and stuff like that, to where it can be like automatic. I don't know what some of that stuff looks like, or even if it's possible right now, but it would be interesting to explore that stuff.
Yeah, maybe a good approach to like that section is like you said, just to describe the direct administrative roles that specific people have over specific platforms and decisions, and then also state like the intention, the long-term intention for where we want to go. To say like, this is how it is right now, but this is what we want to do. And I think that was like the idea behind the spirit and philosophy section at the top, was to sort of describe our long-term vision, and then also describe what exactly is happening in the immediate term.
Yeah, I like that too, because it makes sense also, because like, let's say theoretically, I'm doing something that the community doesn't agree with, and maybe I've done something that's like detrimental, right? And so let's say the community wants to fork away from me. Well, if all of my responsibilities and my centralized capabilities are all listed, then basically that can almost act as a list of like, okay, here are the things that we need to fork from Bushi, right? So let's say maybe Bushi has ultimate control of the Discord, and you can see that in the document. Well, maybe your first course of action is to, abandon this Discord and migrate to a completely new one. Maybe you see that like some of the DAOPunk NFT files are hosted on like a centralized, asset storage that I'm paying for. Maybe you guys move to fork that somehow. You know what I mean? It's almost like you're now creating a guide of like what needs to be forked and when and how. You know what I mean? So it is kind of a good way to think about it.
Wow, that's a really cool way of thinking about the solutions to like all of the various trust vulnerabilities, is like actually describing that in the governance doc as to like what to do when the Discord server goes down because the administrator fucked up. There's like course of action. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, because theoretically, like if a movement is strong enough, it doesn't matter. Anything is possible, right? I mean, literally, if the entire community decides to relocate to a new Discord, is it a different community? In my opinion, not really. If to a degree, like, you guys abandoned the original DAOPunk NFT contract, there's no reason why you can't just spin up a derivative contract and even use the same images. You know what I mean? Like, literally, there's so many solutions to this. And we've seen projects do just that. So, because really the power's in the community. It's not in a centralized person. So,
bingo. No, that's totally it. My friends, we have reached the top of some hour or the beginning of another. On I'm going to stop the recording for now, and we're going to skip next week to be mindful of those friends in ETH Denver, and we'll pick this back up 2 weeks from today. So on the 25th, which seems like a long way off, 25th of February. In the meantime, we'll keep active in the channels, do what we do, and keep moving this document forward to make it the most robust governance framework a DAO at our stage has ever seen. I love it. Thanks for your time and attention, guys.
Awesome. Hey, Bushi, any chance you can hang back for 1 minute?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Is there anyone who can answer? Like, I have a few basic questions on like how NFTs work. Can anybody just can I ask somebody about those? I have a few questions. I'm just generally curious, and they're not like easily Googleable.
Yeah, if you want to hang back with me and Garrett, I can probably answer some questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, you guys can bounce if you want to. If not, Garrett, shoot. Unless it's private. If you want to talk in private, you can too. So it's up to you.
Oh, no, it wasn't private. It just wasn't necessarily governance related.
Hold on real quick, Garrett, just so I can kill the recording. So how do we kill Craigbot, actually?
I don't know.
There.
Should we just all leave?
Oh, there we go. I found it.
Come back in? Oh.
That's ME6.
Craigbot, the little profile picture is funny. It's like really poorly drawn microphone.
I didn't even realize it at first.
It's like a circle.